This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.
Carlos Nelson with Cascade Sports, and tonight we have another one of our HBCU coaches out of Elizabeth City. Who do we have here?
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whichever one it is, wherever you are. My name is Shawn Walker, and I'm the head men's basketball coach at Elizabeth City State University here in Elizabeth City, North Carolina, out of the CIAA conference, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Hey, Coach, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about who you are. There's probably people that you've been coaching really don't know who you are and how you built your skill set, who helped you build your skill set, your philosophy and coaching and so forth to where you're at now.
All right, so great question, man. So I'm a little country boy. I'm from a little small town in northeastern North Carolina called Roper, North Carolina. It kind of sits dead in between Elizabeth City and Greenville. So anybody who's been down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, going down to Nags Head, Kitty Hawk, on your way to Ocracoke, Duck, from the Raleigh-Durham area on down into that area has bypassed, gone straight through Roper, North Carolina, which is really a go-through. So I was born in a family of educators. My father is finished his last job as superintendent of public schools in my hometown, which is a relatively small hometown. As I said, my mother was a teacher. And so I tell everybody a really funny story that on senior skip day, I was the only senior in schools. My dad was my high school principal. My mother was my 12th grade typing teacher. I was in a family expectation of education and academics. But as my dad, as I was growing up, my father was actually he worked in his hometown and he held every position in his hometown in terms of education. So he was a teacher for 2 years. Then he was an elementary principal. Then he was a middle school principal. Then he was a high school principal. Then he was assistant superintendent. Then he was a superintendent. And so during the years that prior to him becoming principal, his first job was coach. He was a history teacher and he was a basketball coach, girls coach, boys coach. He coached about all the kids in my little hometown. And I would say that he was certainly my first coach. He would be responsible for teaching me the game and teaching me discipline and teaching me all the things that go along with having a great understanding that academics and athletics live in the same house, and a house divided can't stand. So kind of moving forward, my dad actually left coaching and moved into education administration, but still spent a tremendous amount of time with me in the gym. Uniquely, think about it. I mean, my dad's the principal. I always had access to a gym. I always had access to balls. I always had access to taking my friends to play pickup ball on the inside. So those were great experiences for me. I was very fortunate in that regard to be able to become an athlete on a middle school campus and on a high school. My middle school was 500 yards away from my home. So I was able to take the key and go into the gym. And that was before the times of shooting machines and cones. That was just when we went to play. And so Dad was my first coach. He was my first mentor. And I'm proud to say that, particularly in this time and age that we are, where there's a lot of men my age and younger that have the story that their dads are not there with them or were not there with them as they grew up. And I certainly don't have that story. And that's a blessing. It's a testimony, so to speak. And I had a bunch of strong men in my life. My dad's co-workers, Lewis Spencer, who has passed on now, was my middle school coach, but he was also my little league football coach. Lewis Rogers, just a host of good men from my area who not only were coaches and great coaches, but were also guys that I look up to now today in terms of what coaching looks like for me and what coaching should be like and the impact that coaches actually place on the laps of the young people that they work with. And so, I'm relatively blessed to have been around an army of coaches and men that have not only helped me have a great career as a player, but to funnel that over into coaching now.
Talk about your play a little bit, and what position did you play?
Yeah, so I was in high school. I was a 3-sport athlete. I played football, basketball, and baseball. So I played quarterback on the football team, which I also played in college. I played point guard and shooting guard. So people know me kind of as I don't win out a shooter, so to speak, but I own all the records at Elizabeth City State. I'm a Hall of Famer there for 3-point percentages, 3 points made. My game was kind of shooting the ball from deep and kind of having a strong IQ for the game.
What year did you go to school in? Your year?
So I went to Campbell University as a freshman in 1990 to 1991, and then I transferred to Elizabeth City State from 91 to 94.
All right. So now let's talk a little bit about your coaching career. How did you start coaching? Where did you coach? And what major coaches were influential in helping you with your skill set?
Great question. I got into coaching right out of college. I graduated in December of 1995. My first coaching position was at Slippery Rock University with a young man by the name of Anthony Jones. And I went to Slippery Rock as a graduate assistant coach. I stayed there for 1 year. 95, 96, I came back to Elizabeth City State, 96, 97, with Coach Barry Hamler. And I was the assistant coach at Elizabeth City then on the year that we went to the Elite Eight, and had a phenomenal year. And at the age of 25, I became a head coach at a little place called Voorhees College in Denmark, South Carolina, which is a small HBCU there in Denmark, South Carolina, plays NAIA. I was head coach there from 97 to 2001. Came back to Elizabeth City in 2001 as the women's coach. I was the women's coach at ECSU from 2001 to 2002. Moved over to the men's side 2002 to 2014. And left Elizabeth City to go to Grambling State University from 2014 to 2017. And then I came back to Elizabeth City in 2018 to now the present. So I've been very blessed. I've had a job since 1995, all but basically 1 year, and very blessed to be back at Elizabeth City for year 2.
All right. What was your record the last 2 years?
Coming back to Elizabeth City, my first year, we were 14-16, I believe, on a year that I came in and started work August 19. I inherited the team after the first 2 weeks of class.
Right.
So we did a pretty good job, I thought. And then this year we were 12-17 on a year that we experienced a tremendous amount of injuries and setbacks. So we're looking forward to getting back to where we were before.
What's the best record that you had at Elizabeth City previous? Yeah,
we were 21-6, 22-6 one of those years. The year after we won the CIAA championship in 2008, we came back. We were 20-6 1 year and 21-5 1 year, something like that.
Where do you recruit most of your athletes from?
We recruit guys from anywhere they can play. If you can play, we try to go find them. So obviously that has everything to do with our budget and what we can afford, but we don't have a boundary of where we go find good players.
Have you noticed, because Cascade Sports, we're pushing HBCUs, and I do a lot of commentary and what have you on this, that we have the product, and these big universities, they wouldn't let us even play back in the day. And now we as Black athletes have to think about going to an HBCU, and a lot of the top players in the country look like that they're taking a different perspective of HBCUs. One thing I didn't know myself was when you get like a top 5 athlete, man, that might bring $200 million to the university. And that changes the landscape for HBCU to receive that type of money. And I'm encouraging all high school top 50, go to HBCU where people look like you. You can have that real college experience. And it doesn't make a difference because wherever you go, if you're good, all eyes are going to be on you.
Yep.
And we've got to start thinking in an economic standpoint, not just what's good for me and my family, what's good for my community.
Right.
In my estimation.
Well, it's just a difficult. I think there's a two-prong there. I do believe it would be wonderful to have our top players at the HBCUs. We're talking again about another small window in packaging our HBCUs, and there's not that many of them, into the Division I perspective. Obviously, the Division II schools like ECSU is not going to get a maker, the kid that's going to Howard. So you're still going to compile that into a Division I perspective. But, you know, we can start to get them. I mean, the experiences have to be good for our young people. It's clearly about resources. And the differences between the experiences that you get at a predominantly white institution and the economic impact for these kids and the things that they have access to at the predominantly white institution versus the historically black institution. So hopefully, you know, the group of HBCUs will get together, empower, and then we'll raise the stakes of what we have to offer these kids, and then we can have an opportunity.
It's all economics. And you see Florida A&M and a couple of other schools now trying to create basically a super PAC. Because
I was just on their campus 2 days ago. I actually was able to walk into that building and into that basketball facility. And that basketball facility is second to none at any level. And so a lot of kids, if you go in and hear the history of Florida A&M and walk into that building as a basketball player,
you got to go there, huh?
It's going to be kind of hard pressed. I mean, that facility is there. Like it's great. And so now, you know, as you go back and take a look at what we're offering kids for cost of attendance and how we're housing them and how we're feeding them and just the access that they have to other things that are intangibles that the predominantly white schools have, we have to get to that point. And if we can, then we can attract some of those kids.
Well, that's what our network is about. We're only Black-owned digital network, and we have 5 or 6 different types of platforms to get our voice out, our narrative without an edit in it, and speak truth to power. And right. One of the major problems we have at HBCUs is the lack of funding. And so we could have a whole show on that. So, Coach, have you given all your scholarships away for 2021?
So we don't have, when you call scholarships for us, we have a dollar amount. So we have about 4.5 equivalencies. So the NCAA allows you 10 full scholarships or 10 equivalencies. 10 dollars that equate to 10 scholarships on a total. We're operating on about 4.5. So we've got to figure out how to piece together a group of kids so that we can utilize that money and then put the best team on the floor. So to answer your question, yes and no. We have spent the money.
Patch it. I get it. You got to have the academic, the Pell Grant.
And it's difficult to package in some places because you don't have the other entities to do so. We only can control the free aid, which is Pell and SEOG. We don't control that. We know for kids relatively economically disadvantaged that we can get Pell. But if he's from out of state, it costs $1,000, gets Pell, we got to put $14,000 on the table to X him out. But that means he doesn't have any money in his pocket. He gets his books, he gets his meals in the cafeteria, he gets a place to live, and that's pretty much it. And $14,000 for us, he has to be good. He has to be good. Cool. So he has to be good. And so when you start talking about a kid that's really good, now you're putting yourself in the place of competing against the other predominantly white institutions, the other HBCUs that don't have that situation. And so a lot of times recruit all through the year. We'll be recruiting for kids that'll take what we have all the way up to the first day of class.
All right, and Coach, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And what would your parting words be to your alumni, to your team, and to the overall sporting community?
I lost you there a little bit, but I think you asked what would my parting words be to the people, stakeholders at ECSU, and I would say we have an infectious and hope that our persona is one that is infectious as it relates to the fact that we're invested into the young people, we're invested into our programs, we're invested into our academic programs on our campus, and we need all hands on deck to make ECSU as great of a place as we know that it can be, and as great of a place as that it has been over the years. We have a great chancellor who is energetic, young lady who is very innovative in her thought. Let's jump on the bandwagon, come on, and let's help ECSU be as great as it can be here for the future and beyond. Hey,
Coach, it was a pleasure having you on the show. And we look forward to covering your 221, getting some tidbits from you. And we'll send you something on our City of Fountains Coaches Association.
Fantastic.
And as we always say in closing, when you invest in your community, you're really just investing in yourself. Good night.
This program is brought to you by Dye Electric LLC, Energy in Motion.